Hello BookTube, hello everyone watching, it's Paul here, and today I thought I would like to do two things. One is introduce you to my 1000 book reading project, and the other one is just to briefly go over some of the highlights of what I've read in 2018, because it's the 22nd of December today, coming up to the end of the year, and obviously it's a good time to reflect and look back on what I've read. But before I get into that, I'll just show you this notebook that I've got here. Quite a special book, because this is where I keep a list of everything that I've read. Since about 2015 I started keeping this notebook, and in fact in 2014, when I first got the idea for putting this personal project together, I went through a process at that point in time of trying to remember everything that I'd read up to that point. I'm quietly confident that I managed to get about 90% probably of what I'd read, because I was only reading a few books a year, and I was able to go into library records, etc., and look in the book collection that I own, and I managed to, I think, record most of the books that I'd read up to that point. And since then, every time I finish a book, a note of it goes in this notebook, and it gives me quite a nice record to look back on and reflect on. The project as a whole, the 1000 books, I'm well aware that a lot of booktubers out there, a lot of people watching this video, would be able to read 1000 books fairly comfortably, maybe over the course of 10-15 years, or significantly less time than that. But for me, the way my life is, it's going to take significantly longer. You can take those 10 to 15 years and double it, and maybe even close to triple that amount of time. So it's quite an undertaking for me personally, because I've got a busy life. Reading is one of my major hobbies, but it's not the only one. I also play piano, and I'm into that, and I spend a lot of time on that too. So yeah, but I enjoy having this project. I guess it's kind of a lifetime project for me, and I thought it was a nice number to go for, because although I've got that project going on, I don't want reading to turn into a numbers game where I'm trying to get through so many books a year, and it becomes that kind of thing. I want to enjoy the reading, I want to have time to digest the books that I'm reading, and so I settled on the 1000 book goal. And just reading an hour a day is, I know that I can achieve my goal. So that said, I'm currently on book 210, so there's a way to go, but anyway, that's my 1000 book project. So what about the books that I read in 2018? What were the highlights? Well, I really wish I had a pile of books here to show you the physical copies, but I'm afraid I'm just going to have to read from the list that I've got in here. But I'm not going to claim that one book was the best or one book was the worst, etc. I'm just simply going to run through some highlights. And so the first book for 2018 that springs to mind, or jumps out at me, is The Old Curiosity Shop by Charles Dickens. That has now become one of my favourite, or my favourite Dickens book. The next one I would mention is 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. that book was hard work. It was a friend of mine's favourite book, and from the title it seemed intriguing to me, but no, I'm afraid, I mean, looking back on it, I suppose it's left me with some pretty vivid imagery. It's a good book for that, but no, I find it quite confusing. I find it hard work. Having said that, I'm glad I read it. The next book, The Woman in Black by Susan Hill. Very short, nice, kind of, I think, Victorian era ghost story, which was, I really enjoyed it. That was a good book. Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. Very original story, I thought, very intriguing, kept me hooked. Great book. The next one that jumps out at me is a biography of Leonardo da Vinci, which is called Flight of the Mind and written by C. Nicholl. That was a big book. I think that was almost 1,000 pages, but it was well worth the read. Extremely interesting book, extremely interesting life of Leonardo da Vinci. Then another biography, The Secret Life of Marilyn Monroe by Taraborrelli. I'll list the name below all these books so you can check them out if you want to. But yeah, that was a great biography, one of the best I've read about Marilyn Monroe. The Miniaturist by Jessie Burton. That was a really nice book. The Illiad by Homer I read this year, which was quite a monumental read, and yeah, I'm glad I read it, but it was a lot of work. The next one, To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. That was a very unique reading experience. This kind of stream of consciousness style of writing that she adopted was intriguing to me, and the story just, it drew me in and I loved it. And after that I read Mrs. Dalloway's Party by Virginia Woolf and just couldn't get into it at all. I know that's a hot favourite for a lot of people, but for me, I just couldn't get into it, I'm afraid. Another good one was The Endurance, written by Caroline Alexander, and it was the story of Ernest Shackleton's Arctic expedition that went wrong, and it turned into one of the most amazing survival stories that there's ever been. So I mean, I highly recommend to anyone that's interested in real life adventure and survival, anything on the Ernest Shackleton story, disaster, is well worth a read. And this book by Alexander has a lot of amazing photographs in it, because they had a photographer along with them on the expedition, and he was able to take photos at various stages of the survival story. Kidnapped by Robert Louis Stevenson. Very nice, famous Scottish book. Good adventure story. I then read a biography of Robert the Bruce, which was by Ronald McNair, Scot. Fascinating life of Robert the Bruce, historical Scottish hero, of course. Silent Companions by Laura Purcell. I really enjoyed that, and one of the most intriguing endings to a book. I really loved the ending. I also read a book on Scottish folk and fairy tales by JArvie, and despite being Scottish myself, a lot of the folk stories, a lot of the myths and legends I was really quite ignorant of, and that was a fascinating read for me. Another one that jumps out is Origin by Dan Brown. That was a really good read until the end and the big reveal moment, and it was such a letdown for me, sadly. Nutshell by Ian Mcewan. Very interesting idea for a book, which is written from the perspective of an unborn child. But I didn't really like the story, and I didn't really like the characters beyond the baby, and it was, yeah, that kind of, I had mixed feelings on that one. A really nice historical murder mystery book that I read this year was The Silversmith's Wife by Sophia Tobin. Really good book. I would encourage anyone to check that one out. I read a book called The Rubicon about the history of the Roman Empire. I've always had a fascination for the Romans, that period of history, and although I didn't know very much about it, but that book really opened my eyes, and it was a tough read. The book was a little bit dry, but the history was interesting and it kept me going. The Human Universe by Brian Cox was another very interesting book, obviously about the universe that we live in, the physics behind it, the science behind it, tackling all those unanswered questions. A lot of it's above my head because I don't really have the right head in me for science, but I still find it incredibly interesting, and I loved that book. Moby Dick by Herman Melville I read this year. Another one I had mixed feelings on. I felt the book was out of balance, heavy on description, and you know, the story seemed to be in the minority of the book, and the majority of it seemed to be descriptions of whales and life at sea and all that. But I did enjoy the book. I especially enjoyed the ending. I got the ending that I was hoping for, so that was a good one. Other books are ones that I've spoken about recently on this channel: Sleeping Beauties by Stephen King, The Hound of the Baskervilles by Arthur Conan Doyle, and both great books. So yeah, that's kind of my reading highlights for 2018 in my trusty notebook. I hope that you enjoyed that. I hope that maybe you got some ideas for things that you might like to read yourself. But yeah, that's kind of it for today. As usual, I hope wherever you are, you're having a good day and things are good, and feel free to get in touch, leave a comment. But yeah, that's it for today. So bye for now and take care.